What is really the hot news of the week that you think we need to be looking at?
Yeah, let's just blast right out the gates with this thing, and we'll go to the COVID-19 vaccine and HIV prevalence. So this was out
Oh,
of the New York Post. Mind-blowing headline: Some COVID-19 vaccines could increase risk of HIV, researchers warn. Now, what they're talking about in this article, it centers around what's called the adenovirus, and it's a it's a group of viruses that cause anything from flu-like symptoms, pink eye, common cold, bronchitis, pneumonias, things like that. Stuff we're exposed to quite a bit. Things people typically have symptoms for. And when they make these vaccines, they use a genetically modified version of this. It's called adenovirus type 585. And what
and this
this
is
what
what
this
is
art
this specifically the viral vector vaccines we're talking about, like AstraZeneca's, where they're using it sort of like a capsule to, deliver a gene and a message to the cells?
Yeah, absolutely. It's
Okay.
Johnson and Johnson. We have AstraZeneca, one out of China, and Russia's main vaccine candidate are all using this type of vectored vaccine. And yes, they use this vector to shuttle in pretty much the protein that goes to for either the AIDS protein because it was used in AIDS research, vaccine research, or the SARS-CoV-2 vaccine, the protein gene for that.
Okay.
So what this article is talking about is that they've tried this before over a decade ago in international studies for HIV acquisition. So they had vaccines to prevent against HIV, and what they were finding was that men who were being vaccinated actually had a higher prevalence of HIV. And again, they were trying to stop HIV acquisition.
Right.
So they're finding that this vaccine it makes men more susceptible, according to the data, for HIV. And let's look at the Lancet. So the Lancet came out with a correspondence. It was really a warning, and it said use of adenovirus type 5 vector vaccines, a cautionary tale. These are four veteran researchers, and they concluded, or I should say warned, on the basis of these findings, we are concerned that use of an 85 vectored for immunization against severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2 could similarly increase the risk of HIV-1 acquisition among men who receive the vaccine. So, they basically quoted a bunch of the studies in there, and they're not exactly sure. The word was murky in the reporting about how this thing actually works. They don't know if it increases the T cell immune susceptibility to HIV infection, or if it actually the replication happens in the T cells of these people.
Hmm.
But this was, for people that are already been exposed naturally to an adenovirus, becoming vaccinated with this vectored vaccine, and then go on to develop an HIV infection. So the researchers were boggled. They're saying, out of all the candidates, all the choices, why would you use this vaccine, especially if we're going to prioritize this for third world countries such as Africa with such a high HIV prevalence?
So what you're saying is that people who have already had their bodies, their immune systems have fought an adenovirus before, that they've developed antibodies or T cell immunity, and somehow having that immunity to the adenovirus, once it's injected into this vector vaccine, that those with higher antibodies or T cell immunity are actually developing HIV at a higher rate. Is that, something that,
Yeah,
okay. I
yeah,
mean,
that's
that's,
what the science was showing, and
and
they had. Yeah, I'm sorry, go on.
well, I mean, it's just shocking because, I mean, here, and this science goes back, right? They're talking, they've known this since they've been trying to have a vaccine for HIV. We knew this was a problem. These scientists apparently are saying, of all the things to be attempting or rushing a vaccine on the market, why this AstraZeneca? I mean, this is just another problem on top of AstraZeneca's vaccine. And I just keep thinking about the fact that we're talking about a 0.26% death rate from the illness itself, and how, Donald Trump and many others have said the cure cannot be worse than the disease. Certainly, acquiring HIV is much, much worse than a disease that 99.7, 4% of us fight off naturally with no problem whatsoever. Look at these numbers right here. We keep seeing these all around. 0 to 19, you have a 99.997% chance of recovery. At 20 to 40, 99.98, 50 to 69, 99.5, over the age of 70, 94.6%. Still high numbers, but you can see where that 0.26% is really sitting. And so to think that we're risking the potential of a vaccine amongst all the other problems we talked about, immune enhancement and autoimmune disease. Now we could have an HIV, develop HIV from the vaccine. That is
Yeah.
really, really a shocking development. And I don't see, I mean, when you brought this to our attention this week, I mean, none of the trials using the adenovirus seem to be looking for this issue. Like, let's make sure in our, trials that we're not having anyone develop HIV. I don't see
Yeah, and
that going on at all.
it's not like this is just a small, minuscule data point. So they held a consensus conference, these researchers in 2013. It was sponsored by NIH. And the conclusion of that conference was basically looking at all the data and all those disaster trials, the HIV trials. They said that using similar vectors in the future for future vaccines could lead to an increased risk of HIV in vaccinated populations in areas where there's high prevalence of HIV. So this is widely known. It's been known widely known since at least 2013. So
Wow.
definitely something to keep an eye on. I hope researchers are really doing their due diligence here. So you mentioned AstraZeneca. We have not another, I'm sorry.